Chairman, the meeting's live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hertfordshire Fire Pension Board. Today is Friday, the 8th of November, 2024. I just have to read out an announcement. The Council will be holding this meeting electronically. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council website for them to do so. Members of the board are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak, and to switch their microphones off once they have finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members so wish. If you experience connection or other technical issues, it may help to switch off your camera. Cameras should be switched on if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raised hand function. Use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting only. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against, or abstain. I will declare the result after each vote. Breaks of at least 15 minutes will be held every 2 hours, should it be necessary, and taken after a speaker in the debate has finished speaking. If the board are voting, the vote will be concluded before the break is taken. Other breaks will be incorporated as appropriate. Okay, now substitutions today. I believe we have Dan Cooper to substitute for Justin Jones for this meeting. Is that correct? Yes, I can see.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep, thank you. Apologies, there are none. I just remind members to declare any pecuniary or declarable interest as and when, if we are going through the agenda. Right, let's move swiftly on. Now, I apologise if you have my side-on view occasionally. This is because I'm having to work from two different sets of computers. Right, item 1 is the minutes. I'm going to ask the board to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of March of this year as a correct record. Is that correct? If so, please can you vote in the chat room? Thank you. That is approved. Are there any matters arising as a result of the minutes from anyone?
Other than a typo, Chair, but I'll talk to Taryn outside the meeting. It's just you should have said rise to risk instead of the minute says risk to risk in one of the tables. Nothing major though.
Right. Okay. Well done, Peter. You can be our expert viewer beforehand then. So
I could be the meeting. I could be the meeting's pain in the neck. I'm happy with that.
All right. Let's move on to the item 2 then. The Hertfordshire Fire Pension Scheme Risk Register report. And I think Alison, do we have Alison? You're going to speak on this, aren't you?
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Off you go.
Great. Okay. So this is the quarterly risk register for the period July to September 2024. As you would have noted from section 5 of the report, there has been 4 new risks that have been added to the register. These are risk 9 Matthews, which is a legal settlement case under the part-time workers regulation. There will be a more detailed report on this, which will be presented by Rachel Wilson later in this meeting. The next risk added is risk 10, which is employers paying incorrect contribution rates. Testing uncovered a long-standing error within the payroll system, which resulted in retained firefighters paying a lower contribution rate than required. Again, Rachel Wilson will provide further details on this in a report later within this meeting. The next risk added is risk 11, new governance regulations. The General Code of Practice came into force on the 28th of March 2024. Officers are working on assessing the current compliance levels with the code. And the final new risk added is risk 12, pension dashboards. This is the requirement for all pension schemes to publish member information on the pensions dashboard. The connection date for public service pension schemes is 31st of October 2025. So there's been 4 new risks in total added, and officers feel that the risk ratings remain at an adequate level for this quarter, and we continue to regularly monitor and review these. And that's all I was going to say on the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison, on that. I just had one question. We have a cut-off date. What happens if we don't meet that cut-off date? What are the penalties, or what are the liabilities for us?
Is that for the pension dashboard?
Yeah.
I believe. Am I right in Taryn?
I think the pensions regulator would be wanting to understand why we're not meeting those deadlines. They haven't released anything about any monetary penalties at the moment, but as the time approaches, I'm sure there'll be more guidance about what happens if you don't meet those timings.
Okay, all right, but we're certainly awake to it anyway.
We are and working with LPPA. Obviously, they hold all the member data. They'll be sharing all of that information to the pensions dashboard, and they're ahead of the they're not ahead of the game. They are where they should be at this point in time, I would say.
Okay. All right, no, that's great. Rob, did you want to add anything to it or not? Oh no, you're muted.
Sorry, I've got nothing to add. Sorry.
Nothing to add. All right. Okay. All right. Are there any questions from members? Having a quick look. I don't see anything. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Alison, for the report. As there's no questions, I think we just need to note the matter, and if we can then indicate that on the chat. Okay, that's all been noted. Thank you very much indeed. All right, we move on to item 3 then, the Hertfordshire Fire Pension Scheme Q1 LPPA Performance Report. And I think we got a change of presenter. Is it Jenny Gregory?
Hi, nice to meet you all. Yes, I'm Jenny from LPPA, and I'm the Senior Ops Manager for the Police and Fire teams. So I've just got an update really on the information that's in the reports. So an update on the McLeod project. There is a software delivery for January 25, which will give us the functionality to bulk recalculate the immediate choice RSS statements for all of those people who are not or did not leave due to ill health or death in service. The ill health, death in service members, they are a manual calculation, and we've identified who those people are. There are a number of green cases and a number of red cases which are still awaiting legislation. But for all the green cases, they are being worked through and will be completed by 31st of March, which is the deadline. In terms of the ABS and the ABS RSS, we have some numbers here around the amount that were distributed. So for McLeod eligible members who received the ABS RSS, active members of the 268 eligible members, 253 have received a statement. So that's 94.4%. For the deferred members, of the 163 that are eligible, 63 have met or have received a statement. That's 46.32%. So overall, we've achieved 78.22% of deferred benefit statements for McLeod eligible members. For those that were not eligible, of the 354 members that were eligible for an ABS, we've got 313 received, so 88.42%. And in the deferred category, there's 299 people who were eligible but not eligible for McLeod, and 279 of those have received a statement, which is 93%. So overall, 90.47% in terms of ABS. We then completed the pension saving statement exercise, so issuing those pension saving statements to those people who've breached the annual allowance. We've sent 7 pension saving statements, and then because of the McLeod remedy, there's a further piece of activity around the pension saving statements, which is the RPSS, and 43 active members and 12 deferred members. So overall, 55 members have now received an RPSS. So that's a bit of an update on the McLeod process and ABS and the work that follows that in terms of the pension saving statements. For the casework performance, for Q1, the overall performance was shown at 100%, with retirements and estimates which have been that have been varying throughout the McLeod process. Were also at 100%. And I have put some Q2 figures in. I don't know if you want me to cover them just because it's a Q1 report, but I think we've issued it, so they are available. There has been a slight reduction in terms of the overall performance. So there's 97.3%, and the active retirements and deferred retirements have also decreased in Q2. This is largely due to a reporting issue that we found within the SLA processes. So they're not reporting the exact stages within the processes that we need them to do. And so that is showing in some cases that they have failed an SLA when they haven't, when you investigate that further. And also just the increased work around the ABS and the increased sort of pressure on the teams around that time. Most of the processing now for all of the green category members, that is now automatic, it's electronic, so it's done through the UPM system. In the previous months, that has been done manually rather than via the administration system. So much more of the case processing is moving towards being able to be done on the administration system, which allows us better efficiency when processing, essentially. And yes, so as we move over, the other thing to note around sort of SLAs for retirements is they can be impacted because we will work in retirement order. So if we have paperwork for somebody who is retiring later than a member, another member whose paperwork comes in, we would always prioritise the payment of the benefit and the provision of the estimate based on the date that that person is looking to retire or is retiring. So that can sometimes put the SLAs out by a couple of days. In terms of the contact centre, so we have an average wait time of 1 minute 53. And I did take an action from the minutes just to have a look at how that compared across the clients that we administer for fire. And so I have pulled out some information around sort of their average wait times. And yours is the lowest. You actually have the lowest average wait time across the fire clients. And in terms of percentage calls answered in less than 4 minutes, yours is around 80%, and that is one of the top 3 sort of percentages. So in comparative terms, the service and the wait times for your members is very good in comparative terms. So yeah, that was just an action that I'd seen on, so I popped in some information around that.
Perhaps Jenny, sorry to interrupt, but perhaps Jenny, you can find some more actions to delve into. that would be helpful. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, you're all right. Don't worry. Yes, so I did have a look. So John had taken 2 actions, I think, from the previous meeting, and the other one was around the surveys. So again, sort of the Q1 and the Q2 reports show that no members have completed the CSAT satisfaction surveys that we put at the end of our calls, and I think there'd been a question from the board in the previous meetings to sort of challenge how we could increase that and what we were doing around improving the response rates to the surveys. So some changes that we've made is that all lines except the bereavements and the employers lines, they're auto opted into taking the CSAT survey. Obviously we can't keep people on the call, but they do get that automatically. Right. We've got new reporting that shows running scores, and they're split by the agents, and they're fed back to them as part of the yearly objectives to up the agent scores. There's feedback, AI feedback, and it forms part of the agent's weekly KPI metrics, and they can see that in the office, and they can see how they score in terms of their team members. And all calls are listened to so that we can look for issues and how people can improve around sort of their responses to members. So there is quite a lot of work being done in terms of customer satisfaction. One of the other pieces of work that's kind of been undertaken is just to have a look at what actually the calls relate to. So what percentage of calls are we getting for various different areas around why people are calling up. And one of the things that has been identified there is that 50% of the calls are actually escalations or chases, so people who are having repeat contact. So they've contacted us and now they are contacting us to chase up on a piece of information that's been received. And that's obviously quite a reasonably high percentage of the calls that is coming in. So some work that we're undertaking in the police and fire team at the moment is to review the workflow processing, and in there to put in some auto acknowledgement stages for members. So I think we've acknowledged that McLeod has been an incredibly difficult period in terms of change and in terms of work volumes, and perhaps over that period we haven't put in those stages where we're keeping members up to date. So acknowledging forms that have been received.
Jenny, can I just stop you there just before we lose it? And I'm sorry again to interrupt, but is that because of staffing issues or is it because of complexity?
It's a mixture, essentially. Right. A lot of the areas of McLeod, especially when in the early days when everything was manual and the pension system wasn't updated to run the calculations on behalf of sort of the processing staff, that was a very manual process, which was 1, time consuming, and 2, much more complex than running it via the system. So I think it's been a combination of the two, essentially.
Right. And has there been any kind of think tank to see how that can be improved, if not overcome, so that that level can be reduced?
Yes, absolutely. So I also sit over the operational change function. So I look after the system at the same time as the people. And one of the things that we're looking at implementing is reviewing all of those processes to put auto acknowledgement stages within there, so that when a piece of information comes into LPPA, that generates communication back to the member to say, we've got your forms and we're working on them, and we'll be in touch within a set number of days, so they know, setting expectation, and then making sure that we're also giving them an update within that time frame. So
Yeah.
that's something that we're filtering into the processes at the moment.
Right. I mean, that communication is, so important for members because of the frustration level of repeat chasing, if you like, and we ought not to have that for members, and we ought to do as much as we can to improve that situation.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I completely agree with you, and that's sort of one of the changes that I'm looking to implement sort of relatively quickly, in terms of that sort of customer journey, almost to manage a customer journey rather than that person sort of being responsible for their own. So
okay, I mean that is good to hear, and make sure that is a top priority. Not only is it frustration, but it's also I would imagine something of a worry for members as well. And the more we can take out that kind of stress and strain, the better. But I do appreciate the staff shortages and the complexity of the issue. All right, okay, sorry to interrupt again.
No, you're all right.
Right.
So the only other thing I was just going to cover was that in Q2, your sign-ups to pension point have actually exceeded the previous levels on the previous administration system, and they're now at 918. So I think the target was always to kind of try and get back to the level where you would have been at previously, and that has now been exceeded.
Right.
So I think the issue of annual benefit statements, with the statements being online, has prompted sort of another flurry of sign-ups, and you're kind of back to where you were previously, if not just a little bit higher.
Okay. All right, Jenny, thank you. I mean that was a really comprehensive run through, and presumably, am I right in thinking that Q2 we will get a much fuller report in our next board meeting? Yeah. Okay. All right. Any questions from anybody? No, I think everybody. Go on.
Sorry, I've just got a point to make that
Taryn,
that John raised with me. Thank you. The timing of these reports feels slightly out of sync. So Jenny's reporting on Q1 in November, but the reason that is that these performance reports come to Fire Board after they've been presented at committee. Now this board has been delayed slightly, and it should have been in October. But Q1 performance will have been reported in our September committee, pensions committee. So that is why, and then this board should have been in October. So then this Q1 performance is now being presented in November. Right. So the next board meeting is in April. So that actually covers 2 quarters, but that would be Q2 and Q3. Right. So I'll make sure that both of those reports are in the pack for Q2 and Q3, and you get a 6-month update. But that is in April 25, when it almost feels like we should be reporting on Q4. But again, it's the timing of the committee, because Q4 isn't reported to pensions committee until the July pensions committee. Does that all make sense? Yeah. And why there's the lag? Yeah.
And I fully accept that, Taryn. I mean, timing is also important, and I appreciate Jenny coming in with some good tidbits from Q2. I mean, my only concern is I don't want members to be missing out on information or receiving information too late, and so that's why timing is so important, I think. But I do appreciate the issue.
Just to add some assurance that as officers we get monthly performance reports from LPPA, so we are always monitoring that, and Rachel works very closely with LPPA on the Matthews and McLeod work as well, so she's always completely up to date with what is going on, and ensuring that members get the best experience possible.
No, and that's absolutely right. I mean, I always go on the HOT theory, being honest, open and transparent as much as we can on information, because information is very important to members, and it gives that good customer experience, that we're up there, we're on it, and they've got the most up-to-date information possible that we can get out, which is very good. Yeah, right. The only other question I had, Jenny, was I always worry about timings, and I know you mentioned that some information had to be provided by the end of March, I think.
Yes.
What are the penalties if we don't do it? Do I get hauled before some committee and chastised, or are we downgraded in any way?
No, so it's reporting to the pensions regulator that deadline has been missed. It is a statutory regulatory deadline, but
right.
There is also a provision within the regulation. So the overarching act that brought in the McLeod legislation for all public sector schemes does have some contingency in there for categories of members who perhaps can't be met. So it is probably unlikely that for 100% of people by the 31st of March, all of these statements will have been sent, simply because some of the guidance that we're expecting from from the Home Office and from the Treasury is not there. And there is an acceptance around there may be still some categories of members that perhaps aren't able to receive a statement because we're not in a position to calculate those. So I think there are things that can be looked at, but yeah, it would simply be the pensions regulator self-reporting, like your annual benefit statements.
Right. Okay. All right. As long as everybody is aware of that we need to be, if there is a deadline, then we need to be, conscious of that and to meet it at all times if possible. But thank you for that answer, because I understand the regulator is quite tough, and so we want to be number one and not number two. All right then, thank you very much indeed, Jenny. If there's no other questions, can we note the report from Jenny and the appendices that were attached in the chat room? Oh. Where are we? Yep, it's gone. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you, Jenny, again. Excellent report, really good. Thank you very much indeed. And we now move on to, I think it's Rachel, item 4, report on the age discrimination and remedy. And I think, Rachel, you got star billing today because you're doing the next two reports as well. So over to you.
Hello, morning everybody. So my first report is on the age discrimination remedy and the council's progress towards making sure everyone has their statements. So this covers off the retrospective remedy. So all of our active retirements have been processed in good time by the LPPA. We've had 12 active retirements under remedy so far. 9 of them have been paid, and 1 case is pending, which is slightly more complex because also the Matthews remedy applies, and 2 other cases are due to be paid in November and January. And LPPA are issuing estimates to anybody who requests one who is retiring within the next 6 months. Our data collection, this has been complete. All of our data is with LPPA and any queries have been answered. The GAD information, again, this has all been sent to LPPA, and we just have 5 queries which HCC are working through. Ill health retirements, again, all of our data has now been sent to LPPA. And intergrade transfers, we had 7 members who transferred in, and we had received all information for those other than for 1 member. However, I have just had that this morning, so we are now all complete with that. And we have sent information to all other authorities who needed the information from us. Contingent decisions. We've had 3 contingent decision claims, all of which have been approved. They all related to opt-out. So these are members who said that if it wasn't for the discrimination, they would have stayed in the fire pension scheme rather than opting out. Those have been approved. 2 were automatic within the kind of the regulations, and 1 was approved by the fire senior management team. So we'll now be collating the information that we need to send to LPPA so they can receive a contingent decision remedial service statement. Contribution adjustments. So as part of Remedy, everyone was rolled back into their legacy schemes, and because the contribution rates are different between the legacy schemes and the reform scheme, this has produced a contribution adjustment. So for those members who have been rolled back into the 92 scheme or the special 2006 scheme, they will now owe contributions, and the reverse for people who have been rolled back into the 2006 scheme, they are due a refund. So when members were issued their remedial service statement, ABS, the contribution adjustment is detailed on the ABS, and members have a choice whether they would like to pay the contribution adjustment now, take their refund now, or they can wait until next year's ABS, or they can decide to pay the adjustment at retirement. It's entirely up to the member. They just have to let us know within 12 weeks of the ABS statement. There is a form to complete, which is on the LPPA website, and in HR and finance, we've got a process together, so we know what we're doing. If we receive any of the forms, we'd be able to take the payment or make the refund to members. And lastly, the engagement with members. So the LGA member website's always sort of updated with the latest information. LPPA have issued letters to people about the delays to the immediate choice RSS. These were sent to members in the red and amber categories. And members have also received a letter about their ABS RSS, either to say it's available in Pension Point or that it's there's some delays. There's various reasons sort of listed why there may be some delays to the statements. And there was also an email to people who to members who had received a pension savings statement. Next, I had just jotted down some kind of figures. Jenny's kind of gone over these in her report, so I won't read them out. It's just numbers of the kind of active and deferred ABS issued and remedial and the pension savings statements. I think Jenny's stats are a little bit more up to date than the ones I'd quoted here. And then just lastly, the numbers that we have outstanding to issue those immediate choice RSS statements to by the end of March. We have 177 members in that category. Okay. So
okay.
That's everything on McLeod.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. I have no questions at all on that one. Anybody else have any questions at all? No, shake of heads and nothing at all. Okay, thank you very much indeed then for that report, Rachel. If everybody could just note in agreement, it's only a noting one in the chat room. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all been noted by everybody. Thank you very much indeed. Item 5 then, Rachel, is retained firefighters and a report on second options exercise. Over to you.
Okay, so this is the Matthews second options exercise for retained firefighters who weren't able to join the pension scheme, so they now have the right to kind of buy back entry into the scheme. So this has mainly sort of been an exercise for the council to date. We have a list of eligible members who we believe are eligible, and we have sent all the kind of communications out to them. when we've received kind of notification that the firefighter isn't at that address, we've been using Tracing Company to try and get a more up-to-date address for them. Individuals have been sending in their expression of interest forms. Once those come in, we're able to kind of then get a quote for them using the GAD calculator, and then members can elect to take up the offer or not. We have had election forms being returned now, so we've been able to invoice the active and deferred members for the contributions, and any pensioner members, they will have their contributions taken sort of out of their pension benefits when those are paid to them. We haven't had any pensioners paid as yet. LPPA is still kind of working on a process. I think they've said in the next week or two, they'll be able to kind of issue some communications to their clients about what that process will be, and with the timescale for payment for the pensioners. There were some tax issues. I listed those in my report, but those have all been sort of resolved now by the LGA, working with HMRC and Treasury. And reporting, we do have to report quarterly to the LGA on our sort of stats, our numbers. So I've listed those in the report. So we do have 383 members in scope. We've managed to contact 360 of them, just 23 we're still trying to trace. 117 members have sent back their expression of interest forms, and we've sent out quotes to 86 of those. These stats were as of the end of September, so I know that we have sent out a few more quotes since then. And at the moment, we have 38 cases which have been passed to LPPA in order to set up pension counts and make payments to any pensioner members.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Rachel, for that. Again, very helpful. Just one question from me. And of the 23, what happens if they cannot be located? If the tracing agency can't find these people?
Yeah, we're due to send out a final reminder to everybody around December time, and then before the end of the statutory deadline in March, we will send out another letter to confirm that we haven't heard back from them. I mean, we're going to try and keep tracing members, right, using the Tracing Company, but if nothing comes back, then we will send a letter to say we've tried to contact you. However, we've been unsuccessful.
Right. Okay. All right. And finally,
may I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Is that Peter?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Go on, Peter.
Rachel, thank you. I don't know why I find it so disconcerting that we can't find 23 people. Could you give me, without breaking confidences, how that comes about that we're not unable to find folk when they have, say, national insurance numbers that one would imagine you could trace employment records through, etc. Could you give me a typical example of how it comes about we can't find somebody?
Yeah, so we will have address details on file, so we'll send letters out to those addresses, and sometimes it will come back as return not at that address, so then we kind of will engage the Tracing Company to try and contact the member. So they may or may not be able to find a different address on file for them. Sometimes they provide a different address and we may send a letter out to them and we might not hear anything back. So then it's difficult to know whether the member's just not replied or whether they're not at that address either. So we can send information out to the addresses we have and then send that information to the Tracing Company to see if they can find different information.
Are these deferred members or pensioner members?
They're deferred members, so they haven't. A lot of them won't have a pension with LPPA at all. So they're just people who, they worked as a retained firefighter and they never had a pension, and then they've left our employment, and it could be that they left employment 20 years ago or more.
Yeah. Okay, so there is opportunity, or let's say they passed away, or they've left the country, or that sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah, or they just might not be replying to the letter as well, which I think is another option. I have had, I know there's quite a lot of word of mouth. We've put posters up in the retained stations, and we have been contacted with people who have spoken to other people. So I think there is a bit of word of mouth about this exercise, but anything anyone could suggest to contact the other members would be welcomed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some of the ideas that Peter proffered there, crossed my mind about leaving the country or died or whatever. I presume the tracing agency have a kind of relationship with the tax office in exchange of information, or we do. So presumably through the tracing company, they could do that, rather than just knock on the door or send a letter and that kind of thing. Would I be right in thinking that, or am I being a bit naive?
Yeah, I think you are correct. Taryn, I don't know if you've had a bit more experience with the tracing companies.
I haven't actually. Jenny might actually be able to help. I don't know, because are you using Target through LPPA, Rachel?
We are, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what Target use, but they would be able to likely be able to find out if somebody had passed away. But Jenny, do you know how they operate?
I don't know specifically what Target use, but sort of generally it tends to be things like electoral registers, and they can check the sort of the national fraud database that would look for deceased members and things like that. But I can find out what specifically Target are using. If you're using Target through LPPA, I can certainly find out what the checks that they actually do.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I mean, Peter made a very good suggestion about everybody has a national insurance number, and through the tax system, there would be an opportunity of knowing where they might be. But it's the exchange of information, and I know, gosh, we always jump through the hoops, don't we, in trying to get information, and we might fall foul of GDPR, but yeah, it's worth checking to find out what Target do use, rather than the electoral roll or knocking on door or etc.
Yeah, I've taken an action for that, so I'll make sure that we provide some feedback in terms of what specifically Target use to trace members.
Yeah. We don't want anybody to lose that. Yeah, sorry, Tara.
If Jenny, if you can send that to me, I'll circulate it to board members.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, if there's nothing else, then can we then vote in chat that we note the content of the report? Yes. Has everybody voted? Yep, done. All right, excellent. Everybody has noted that report. All right, Rachel, final report again is retained firefighters, and this is a report on the contribution rates, I think.
Yeah, this is the last report. So this is a report regarding an issue on the contribution rates for retained firefighters and corrective action which has been undertaken. So as a bit of background, in April 2012, the contribution rates, which were originally just a flat rate, were changed to tiered contributions. So depending on the kind of the pay of the firefighter would depend on what contribution rate the firefighter needed to pay. And the 2015 scheme also had tiered contribution rates. So whilst we were getting all of our McLeod data ready and sent across to LPPA sort of did some initial checks on our data, and they flagged a couple of kind of issues. One was just on our reporting, that we'd kind of like copied the same rate for both the legacy scheme and the reform scheme. So that was just we were able to correct that. But the other issue, they sort of flagged that the contribution rates for retained firefighters looked low in relation to their pay. So we did a bit of investigation in the payroll system, and we did identify that the contribution rates were being determined by the firefighters' retaining fee rather than their whole-time equivalent pay, which then meant that the firefighters were not paying as much contributions as they should have done. They should have been put into a higher contribution banding and paying a higher contribution rate. And this had been kind of in the system since April 12. So kind of for the last, over 12 years, this was an issue where the firefighters weren't paying enough contributions. It's important to note, though, that it didn't affect the amount of employer contributions being paid or the amount of pension that anybody who had retired had been receiving. So once we realised that the payroll system wasn't set up correctly, we notified the service and the scheme manager. And due to the nature of the error, in fact, we thought that it would have been very difficult for a retained firefighter to know that they weren't paying enough contributions. In particular, they often have a retained and a whole-time record, and the percentage difference would only be sort of maybe 1.5% difference. And as a retained firefighter's pay is lower, then the amount of contribution difference they would have seen would have been quite low. So it would have been quite difficult for them to have spotted the mistake themselves. And also a lot of the retained firefighters had since left the service or had retired. HCC decided on an exceptional basis that it would cover the historical shortfall in employee contributions. The payroll system has been corrected as of April 24. All of the firefighters were written to ahead of that change in April 24 to explain the historical error, and the fact that they were seeing more contributions taken from April onwards, and also to confirm that they wouldn't need to repay any of those contributions previously. The errors estimated to have affected 443 employees between April 12 and March 24, with a total of 225,000 in underpaid employee contributions. Finance colleagues have put the provision in the accounts, and the top-up grant has been adjusted accordingly. And LPPA have confirmed there's been no change to our finance data or our GAD data for McLeod. That this error won't affect anything to do with McLeod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that conclude? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I think I've just done the just about reporting and monitoring due to the kind of like the prompt action taken to kind of investigate and to correct the error. We didn't think it was necessary to report to the pension regulator, and we have got sort of monitoring in place going forward on our monthly returns to do some spot checks, not just to check that the rate is pulling through onto the return as per it is in SAP, but also to do some banding checks to make sure that rate is correct in the first place.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I was following your report, and I thought you got to the end because you then took the words straight out of my mouth in terms of the pension regulator, but also the fact that the county council stepped in and covered those contributions, and that is to be welcomed. So thank you very much indeed for that. I had no other questions on that. Well done, Rachel. Anybody else have a chip in or not?
I asked a question in chat, Chair, regarding how HCC came to that decision to meet the shortfall. Was the union involved at all, Rachel, in that decision-making process, or was it kind of a top-down approach?
I can't recall actually whether the union was involved. I do know that we wrote a kind of like a briefing report, which was considered by the Chief Fire Officer in conjunction with the scheme manager and Director of HR. I can find out whether the union
No, don't do that. It's just to get it up top of your head. I don't want to give you any work. It's just an interesting from my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, John, you're coming in.
Well, just around in on that, and for Peter's reassurance, certainly the senior leadership team was cited on it, if nothing else, because purely for accounting purposes, that additional money was attributed to the fire service budget. So that contributed essentially to an overspend at our end of year. One thankfully that the corporate centre picked up ultimately, but yes, certainly senior leadership were involved.
Thank you.
And I would have thought there would have been quite an extensive discussion through the finance team at the county council. Scott Cruddington would have been involved, I would imagine, along with Stephen Pillsworth. I was certainly not aware myself of any direction or anything regarding whether the fire budget as a whole would have been an overspend. I mean, that didn't come to my notice, and even in my role as a county councillor, I was not aware of that. But it's good that they did step in, and I would imagine that there would have been senior discussion. You might want to kind of make Rachel, just a question on that, around that maybe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. All right. No, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed, then, Rachel. If we can just note the report in the chat room again. Seems to noted. Oh, good. All right. That's been agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. That concludes the main body of the reports this morning. So I thank everybody for their input, everybody for attending. The date of the next meeting is not until April, the 4th of April 2025, and that is reverting back to 10 a.m. 10 a.m. rather, sorry. No other business has been tabled. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed for everybody's attendance. I know we normally have one of these meetings near Christmas, so that gives me the opportunity to have a mince pie and a mulled wine or whatever on my desk, but I haven't got it at the moment. But I wish everybody a good holiday period anyway. I can say that because I saw the first Christmas advert on the television, so I know that Christmas is coming. And just a word to all members, retired members, I always do it and I always say it. Thank you very much indeed for your service. It does not go unnoticed with me, and you are one of my favourite services. And I say that being an ex-serviceman myself in the police service. So I appreciate everything that the men and women of the fire service do. And I always like to put that on record. So thank you very much indeed. Now, some of us are going to remain, I think, because Simon is waiting in the wings for, I think he's got a 4-hour briefing session. Is that right, Simon? Are you there? Right. Okay. Are we offline now, or are we going offline, Stephanie?